היא הצטערה, מכיוון שזה שירי ארץ ישראל. אני בחרתי שני שירים, אחד יותר של יום הזיכרון, ואחד יותר של יום העצמאות. השיר של יום הזיכרון זה לא אחד השירים הכי עצובים, זה יותר שיר מרגש. מה זה מרגש?
Feeling? Emotional?
Yeah, moving, I would say. Moving, it's a move. Oh, look at Sharon. Yay, how'd you get that one? Good job. Okay. אז אנחנו, שלחתי לכם את המילים, אתם מעדיפים, אני יכולה לשים את המילים על המסך?
בבקשה.
עדיף לכם? אוקיי. ואנחנו נשמיע, אני אשמיע גם, אז רגע. תנו לי להתעסק עם המחשב רגע, מכיוון שזה מחשב חדש, אז אני עוד לומדת אותו, אז it's a Mac, and I never had a Mac before, so still learning. אז רק רגע, בבקשה, סבלנות.
Not I can get them, but
We hear you, Leon, which is fine, as long as you want us to hear you. One of the problems שהמחשב שלי זה לא, המסך לא מסך מגע, it's not a touch screen, אני לא יודעת למה. אז במחשב הישן יכולתי להגדיל את המסך, right, by pulling, and I just don't know how to do that yet on the Mac. אז אם זה קטן, לא תמיד יש לי אפשרות להגדיל. I'm sorry.
אני עוזב לראל, למצוא את המילים.
No, I'm going to put them up on the screen.
Okay, בסדר.
You don't have to, אני שלחתי
מבין.
אותם. ליאון, אני גם שלחתי אותם באימייל.
I have to go back to the email. אני צריך לחזור לאימייל.
יש לך מדפסת? You have a printer? אתה רוצה להדפיס? Is that comfortable? Is that convenient for you? שתיכנס למילים? אז בבקשה, קח עוד דקה, go to the email, click on it, and if you want to print, maybe that's better for you.
It's really okay.
Is that better for you? Okay, טוב, בוא ננסה ככה. אז רק רגע.
I'll be right back.
Uh-oh. A Mac issue, just a minute. Apologies. Every time I do one new thing in the Mac, I have to learn how to do it.
There you go.
Hopefully. Okay.
להיוולד כל בוקר מחדש עם כל מילת פרידה למות מעט ולהביא אל העולם עוד בן ובת בארץ של חלב מרור ודבש ללכת שבי אחרייך לנשום את השמש הצורב לחלום אותך מול שמייך לכאוב אותך ושוב להתאהב לשאת חלום מבטן מדורות לשאול באביבייך נחמה לחיות על פני ובתוכי הנוראה והיפה הזאת, ללכת שבי אחרייך, לנשום את השמש הצורב, לחלום אותך מול שמייך, לכאוב אותך ושוב להתאהב. אם ערב הט קולנו יעלה, מבוקר יום אלינו יבוא, ופדיוננו ייראה עד בוער בוא. מתי סוכת שלומך עלינו תגלה, ללכת שבי אחרייך, לנשום את השמש הצורב, לחלום אותך מול שמייך, לכאוב אותך ושוב להתאהב.
להיוולד כל בוקר מחדש, עם כל מילת פרידה למות מעט, ולהביא אל העולם עוד בן ובת, בארץ של חלב מרור ודבש.
ללכת שבי אחרייך, לנשום את השמש הצורב, לחלום אותך מול שמייך, לכאוב אותך ושוב להתאהב. ללכת שבי אחרייך, לנשום את השמש הצורב, לחלום אותך מול שמייך, לכאוב אותך ושוב להתאהב.
שרון. מכירים את השיר הזה?
לא.
זה אולי השיר הראשון שאני למדתי בארץ, שלא הכרתי קודם, שגם תפס את הלב שלי. אז זה לפני הרבה שנים, זה בשנות ה-70. אני למדתי בשנת 1972, וזה שיר מאוד מאוד יפה, גם המילים מאוד יפות, וחשבתי שזה יפה שאנחנו נלמד גם את המילים, ואחר כך אפשר שוב שאני אשמיע את השיר הזה. אני לא יודעת אם הם עוד בחיים, אילן ואילנית, אח ואחות, צמד זמרים. שמעתם עליהם? אילנית? אילן? לא. אוקיי. אז אולי מישהו יתנדב, אני אשים את המילים על המסך.
יש לי שאלה על מילות השמש הצורב.
אז רגע, אנחנו תכף ניכנס. תכף אנחנו נקרא את כל המילים. טוב, שוב, אני לא יודעת איך להגדיל את המסך. I'm so sorry. ניסיתי. לא הצלחתי להגדיל יותר מזה כרגע. לא. פשוט לא רואה איך אפשר. רואים? לא רואים?
כן,
רואים.
אוקיי. מי מתנדב לקרוא את המילים ולנסות להבין אותם? לא מתנדבים? מי קרא פעם אחרונה? אני לא זוכרת.
שרון?
שרון, נכון, שרון קרא בפעם אחרונה. ביביאן, את רוצה לקרוא? אני לא זוכרת מתי קראת. ג'ודי, את רוצה לקרוא?
אני יכולה
את יכולה מה?
לנסות, נעשה.
זה בלי ניקוד.
אוקיי, אין דבר.
אוקיי, אז לאט לאט, כן.
ללכת, בבקשה תתקני אותי כמו שצריך.
I
אוקיי.
think I always do that, even without asking.
כן, כן. ללכת שבי אחרייך, לנשום.
Wait, where are you? Here, להיוולד.
להיוולד כל הבוקר מחדש.
No, not כל הבוקר.
כל בוקר.
כן.
בלי
נכון.
להיוולד כל בוקר מחדש, עם כל מילה פרידה למות מעט. להביא אל העולם עוד בן ובת, בארץ של חלב, מרור ודבש.
I think that's like one of the most beautiful lines, חלב מרור ודבש, זה פשוט, זה ממש חזק ותופס כל כך יפה את הלב. אז בואי תסבירי. רוצה?
להיות...
להיוולד means to be born.
I can't, I just didn't know how to say that again.
זה בסדר, אפשר גם להסביר באנגלית אם רוצים.
Okay. עם כל מילה פרידה למות מעט.
אז I'm not sure what they mean by that. מה אתם חושבים? אז עם כל מילת פרידה, אולי מדובר על שאומרים שלום לחייל. Is that what you were thinking, Ben?
Right.
כן. למות מעט, כי כל פעם שאומרים שלום לחייל, יש פחד שלא יראו אותו. אז היו בעיקר חיילים, פחות חיילות, שהיו בקרבי, in active duty. Not active, what's that called? What is קרבי called? Combat.
Right.
אוקיי, אז להיוולד כל פעם מחדש, מה זה אומר לכם? To be born every day anew, מה זה? Does that speak to you מבחינת ארץ ישראל? Thoughts?
שכל חדש שם, הארץ חדשה, אז...
את מרגישה שכל יום זה ארץ חדשה שם? I mean, I think it's a beautiful line, אני רק שואלת למה התכוונו.
יש תמיד כל בוקר פחד.
פחד, not פחד, פחד. I'm just saying the accents on the first letter, פחד. כן, אבל להיוולד כל בוקר מחדש לדעתי זה דווקא אופטימי. optimistic, אני לא חושבת שזה, אני חושבת, אלא אם כן, אני זוכרת שהבן שלי היה בצבא, בשנה וחצי הראשונים לפחות, כל בוקר התעוררתי ואמרתי, ברוך השם שלא דפקו על הדלת שלי בלילה. כל בוקר אמרתי את זה. I don't know if that's what they meant, אבל זה מזכיר לי את ההרגשה שלי שהייתה לי. אוקיי, אז להיוולד כל בוקר מחדש. עוד מחשבות על להיוולד כל בוקר מחדש? הערות?
להיות אופטימיסטי.
אופטימיים.
אופטימיים כל יום מחדש.
אופטימיים. יפה. Oh, I like that. Very, very nice. Beautiful, Leon. תודה. בית, מה רצית להגיד?
משהו שדומה לזה.
משהו דומה, אוקיי. Like father, like daughter.
There you go.
אוקיי, יפה. עם כל מילת פרידה למות מעט, שזה תמיד נכון, you know, יש כזה פתגם or something, that every parting is like a small death, יש כזה, there's a, אבל כאן זה יותר אמיתי, הייתי אומרת. אוקיי, בבקשה.
יש שאלה על פרידה, זה יכול להיקשר למילה להיוולד, כמו בתוך הלידה יש פרידה. או אין, זה לא הכוונה.
I don't think so.
No.
כל מילת פרידה means every time you say goodbye, לא כל כך נראה לי. It's an interesting idea though, שיש פרידה גם בתוך לידה. זה גם רעיון יפה.
And with each לידה יש יותר קרוב למוות.
Well,
okay. Interesting.
I know it's not the.
I mean, I guess it's true. You can't die unless you're born. That's true.
Every minute you're born, you're closer to death.
Ivanti. Oh, that's an interesting take on it. Okay. So, And I don't think that's what
אז
it
אני
meant.
חושבת,
אבל זה יפה. כן,
אז-
בeth.
אם קוראים את כל I don't know how you say paragraph, stanza, סליחה?
קטע.
את כל הקטע הקטן הזה.
בית, actually, you say בית,
בית,
yeah.
זהו, בדיוק. אז להיוולד כל בוקר מחדש זה חיובי. ועם כל מילת פרידה למות מעט זה שלילי.
נכון,
להביא אל העולם עוד בן או בת זה
נכון.
חיובי.
נכון.
והשורה האחרון זה
נכון.
שניהם.
אחרונה.
בארץ של חלב, מרור ודבש.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful, beautiful. אז בואי תמשיכי, ג'ודי, לקרוא. תודה רבה, בית, זה באמת היה מאוד מאוד יפה. כן, אז that's the beauty of poetry also, that we can read into it more than the משורר, than the person. כן.
Okay,
אז את רוצה להביא אל העולם, רוצה לקרוא? ג'ודי.
להביא אל העולם עוד בן או בת בארץ של חלב מרור ודבש.
כן, אז מה זה חלב מרור דבש? על מה זה, you know, it's a play on words there, נכון?
Yeah. בדרך כלל אומרים ארץ חלב ודבש, בלי
נכון. הם הוסיפו. I mean, I feel like it's really very much about חיילים and about צבא. ככה זה נראה לי. מאוד נראה לי, כן. זה יותר שיר של יום הזיכרון, הייתי אומרת, בסך הכל. אוקיי. בסדר? כולם בסדר? רוצים להמשיך? בסדר?
וגם עכשיו, ארץ ישראל, עכשיו יש חלב ויש מרור, מה שיש מרור.
Vivian, are you speaking to us?
גם.
Vivian doesn't hear. Ay. Frustrating. כן. יש עכשיו חלב מרור ודבש? למה את מתכוונת, ג'ודי?
למצב עכשיו בארץ ישראל, בזמן שאנחנו מייחדים, אנחנו ביחד, בזמן עכשיו שיש פורצים לוחמים אחד עם השני.
הייתי אומרת רבים, arguing. Feels a little better than נלחמים.
Right. Yeah, לוחמים is more like war. No.
Yeah. דרך אגב, ג'ודי, כתבתי על זה בדבר תורה היום, את יכולה להסתכל באימייל של הבית כנסת. אוקיי, בואי תמשיכי בפזמון. The פזמון is the chorus.
אוקיי, ללכת שבי אחרייך.
אז קודם כל, מה זה ללכת שבי אחרייך?
Yeah. Enslaved.
I wouldn't say it could be enslaved. I think captive is a better word.
It's captive. It's a captured in war.
In the army, in the war, right.
ללכת, נכון. שבי אחרייך. But what does that mean? מה זה הפתגם הזה, this expression? ללכת שבי אחרייך. I don't know if she coined the phrase, by the way. It could be that the person שכתב את השיר הזה, נורית הירש, מילים אהוד מנור, זיכרונו לברכה, I think, ולחן נורית הירש, beautiful. אני לא יודעת אם הם המציאו, if they created את אני לא יודעת. בכל מקרה, מה זה ללכת שבי אחרייך? את יכולה להסביר במילים שלך, ג'ודי, או לא כל כך?
לא כל כך.
מי רוצה, מי מתנדב?
אני...
כן, בבקשה, סבו.
האם זה ללכת שבי לארץ?
קודם כל, אחרייך זה ארץ ישראל.
זה ארץ ישראל.
כן, אבל את יכולה להגיד ללכת שבי אחרי בן אדם גם, זה לא, or anything.
כן, אבל בשיר, אני חושבת להתכוון שבי לארץ.
בטוח.
כאילו שיש, אין ברירה.
No, I don't, זה לא מדויק, so אני חושבת, יכול להיות שאני טועה. I think ללכת שבי אחרייך זאת בחירה. זאת בחירה.
You think?
I don't know if זה אין ברירה. You think it's אין ברירה?
זה כאילו הארץ, סליחה, כאילו הארץ תופס אותך. אז אתה שבי לארץ.
Yeah, but I want to say I feel like that's not the way it's used in modern Hebrew language. And you
Good.
couldn't know this, but זה מהניסיון שלי בארץ. ללכת שבי אחרי, נגיד there's a charismatic personality, מישהו יכול להגיד, אני הולך שבי אחריו. Meaning, like,
Captivated by him.
Captivated.
yeah, captivated, but ללכת שבי means I follow him, I'm a real close follower, as if I'm held captive.
Yeah,
But
אבל
it's a
בכל
choice.
זאת שאי אפשר לצאת מזה.
I don't think that's what it means, but you know what? You want to try to look that up, Beth, because it could be I'm wrong. אבל נראה לי שזה לא שאי אפשר לצאת מזה, even though it makes sense here. I feel, I don't know, but I could be wrong. Why don't you look it up and let's see if we can find, כי אני חושבת שבאמת הפתגם הזה, this expression, זה הגרעין, it's the essence, המהות של השיר. ויויאן, את איתנו? ויויאן?
כן,
את שומעת עכשיו?
כן.
את שומעת?
עכשיו, כן.
יופי, מצוין.
אני תיקנתי את השמיעה.
Oh, מעולה, יופי, מצוין. I know, it's very frustrating, and כל הכבוד.
היה בחשמל בבית שלי.
זה מה בבית שלך?
היה בחשמל אתמול.
כן, אוקיי.
ולכן זה גם שהשמיעה.
לא טובה, אוקיי. טוב, אז בית מסתכלת. אז ללכת שבי אחרייך, for sure it means I follow you anywhere. That, for sure, that's what it means. בבקשה, תמשיכי. מה זה? מאוד יפה. I think the next line is really one of my favorites. סליחה, את רואה את המסך, ויויאן? ויויאן, את רואה את המסך?
כן, יש לי
אז
מסך.
אנחנו בפזמון, the chorus. בסדר?
להיוולד כל בוקר מחדש.
No, that's the bait, that's the stanza. עכשיו הגענו לפזמון, to the chorus. זה הבית השני, it's the second one, ללכת שבי אחרי. ג'ודי, תקראי את השורה השנייה בפזמון.
אוקיי, לנשום את השם.
wait, רגע, ויויאן, שנייה, ג'ודי קוראת בקול. כן, ג'ודי.
לנשום את השמש הצורב.
מה זה אומר? מה זה אומר?
אני שאלתי מה...
So צורב is burning.
Oh, okay.
שמש צורבת is when it's really hot, really burning. מה זה לנשום את השמש הצורב?
This is, isn't lishom to breathe?
Yeah.
To inhale, like.
To inhale, to breathe, נכון. השמש הצורב. I think it's like putting the senses together. הייתם פעם בארץ כשהיום מאוד מאוד חם, אולי יום של שרב, יום של חמסין, you really feel like you're breathing in the heat. כן. And it also, כן, צורב is burning.
Burning.
כן, צורב is like, it's a burning, but it's not like soref to go up in fire. Let's see. Ken, Beth.
I found a translation of the song, and it translates it as to follow captive in your footsteps.
Yes, to follow captive. I also have that translation, but I didn't want to put it up because I wanted us to translate. To follow captive in your footsteps. So that more means you're captivated by the person. It's less about them chaining you. That's all I'm going to say. But ככה משתמשים בביטוי הזה בארץ. Okay? זה לא אומר, אבל that in some ways we have no choice, right? טוב, לנשום את השמש הצורב. So צורב is burning, oh yeah, stinging, it smarts, it's scathing to cause a burning sensation. Like you could have a burning like allergic sensation or from, that could also be tzorev, like a burning, prickling sensation. As linshom et hashemesh hatzorev doesn't mean that you're burning up, like sreifa. Mevinim tzat et havdel ben? Okay. As linshom et hashemesh hatzorev for me puts me right into Israel, biyom me'od cham. ואני ממש מרגישה שהאוויר לוהט. That the air itself is burning. בבקשה, תמשיכי, ג'ודי.
לכאוב אותך ושוב.
Wait. שורה שליש.
כן, לחלום אותך מול שמייך.
מה זה אומר? מה זה לחלום אותך? They're using like as if in proper Hebrew grammar to give you a feeling. לחלום אותך מול שמייך.
To imagine you, like to
No,
dream.
חלום is a dream, not
To dream.
imagine.
Right, okay, to dream
I think it could be to dream about you or what we want, הציפיות, החלומות שלנו, מול שמייך, and really, השמיים בהירים וכחולים בארץ, לא כל כך בחורף, אבל ביום שהשמש חמה, אז אתם יודעים ש6 חודשים אין גשם בארץ.
כן.
The dry season. אז לחלום אותך, אני תמיד חושבת על שמיים כחולים, גם שמאוד חם. So it's really putting you directly there into Israel on a hot day with the clear blue skies. לכאוב אותך ושוב להתאהב. So, בדרך כלל משתמשים, I'm sorry, תגיד עוד פעם, ליאון.
איך אומרים paradox בעברית?
Paradox.
Paradox.
לא, אפשר להגיד סתירה, אני חושבת.
Right.
סתירה זה,
Inconsistency.
how do you say it? Wait, let me just see if I can.
Derive.
I know you say paradox in Hebrew. It is used, paradox. Yes, מצב או טענה המכילה סתירה פנימית. It is the word that's used, paradox. סתירה פנימית. So, מה הפרדוקס אצלך, ליאון? מה הפרדוקס?
לכאוב and love at the same.
It's not at the same, כאילו, זה נראה לי שזה עליות וירידות, ומתי כואבים את ה... נראה לי של... I don't know what it means. לכאוב אותך means I hurt you, meaning we hurt the land. How do we hurt the land? בשוב להתאהב.
לכאוב אותך.
I mean, it's poetic. I just want to make that clear. בשוב להתאהב.
האם זה צריך להיות לכאב אותך?
No, להכאיב, maybe. It would be להכאיב לך, to give you pain, אבל לכאוב אותך is a very poetic way. להכאיב.
זה כאילו שזה איתך. To dream with you,
it's like...
to dream with you, to hurt with you.
Oh, לכאוב אותך. I thought לכאוב אותך meant to hurt you, but you're saying to feel your pain, maybe?
Yeah.
בשוב להתאהב. אז מה זה בשוב להתאהב?
Fall in love with you again.
Fall in love again, right. So, I thought תמיד שאנחנו מכאיבים לארץ, ואז שוב מתאהבים, אז so maybe what it means is, זה כל כך קשה בגלל המלחמות. אבל שוב גם, כן, ויvian, מה?
אולי זה שמכאיב את השני, הוא גם מרגיש את הכאב, גם...
אז אולי זה לא להכאיב, אני חושבת שבית צודקת, זה לא להכאיב, לכאוב אותך, אולי זה באמת להיות איתך בכאב שלך, ושוב להתאהב.
הוא משתתף בכאב.
כן, כן, ושוב להתאהב זה למרות החיילים שנפלו, למרות המצב, עדיין אנחנו בקשר אהבה עם הארץ. יופי, ג'ודי, בבקשה תמשיכי.
אוקיי, לשאת חלום מבטן, מדורות.
So, רגע, זה נראה לי עניין של זמן. לשאת חלום means to carry a dream. אולי מבטן means from when you're born. כלומר, מתוך, when you're still in utero, וגם מדורות. Right, it's a new dream and it's an old dream. איזה יופי, איזה שורה נפלאה.
בטן can be from the beten of the אימא.
בדיוק, that's what I think it is, yeah. וגם מדורות. אנחנו נושאים חלום, שיר המעלות, בשוב השם את שיבת ציון. כן, אנחנו היינו כחולמים, אנחנו כבר המון דורות, אנחנו חולמים על זה, כן, לשאול.
לשאול באביבייך נחמה.
באביבייך, your springs.
אוקיי.
מה זה לשאול? Is it to borrow? Or to ask? נחמה, אוקיי, אולי, דרך אגב, אולי פה אביב, זה לא עונת האביב, but כשאין מלחמה, כשהכל נראה חדש ויש תקווה, maybe that's what it means, אולי בגלל זה יש נחמה, כן, תמשיכי ג'ודי?
לחיות על פני ובתוכי האדמה.
not תוכי,
בתוכי האדמה.
יפה. So we live on top of the land, אולי בגלל אוי. So that sounds like אולי החקלאים. We live on the surface of ארץ ישראל, כי חיים על האדמה, אבל גם בתוך האדמה, כי קוברים אנשים, את החיילים. וואו. כן, תמשיכי.
המראה, forget the foundation.
הנוראה והיפה הזאת.
הנוראה והיפה הזאת.
היא גם יפה והיא גם נוראה, כי יש מחיר מאוד גבוה לחיות בארץ היום. בבקשה, את ה...
ללכת.
No, you don't have to repeat that, that's okay. בבקשה. את הבית האחרון, בבקשה.
ללכת שבי אחריי.
No, that's the פזמון.
Okay, all right. Okay.
עם ערב.
עם ערב, had or hard.
So actually, head is an echo.
Head. Oh, an echo. Head kolam ya'aleh.
Kolenu, I think.
Kolenu. Oh, I can't
Our
see.
voice.
Right, ya'aleh. Mi boker yom elim hine
Elenu hu yavo.
Elenu hu yavo.
I don't know what the who is. Ulai the kol?
Elenu hu.
Miboker yom elenu.
Hu yavo. That's.
Ufidionenu, a pidion is...
Wait, what did you say the word head is?
Head is an echo.
Echo. So maybe that's the echo, because that's Yachid. And the hu yavo is Yachid.
The kol?
It's, you know,
The echo is coming again. Mi boker yom elenu hu yavo. The echo will come in the morning.
it's from Yom Kippur.
נכון. יעלה קלנו מערב, יפה, נכון. יפה, I forgot about that. מצוין.
Upidionenu yireh advo arvo. And our,
What does that say in the English, Beth?
I lost it. Hang on. This eve, our prayers echo will arise at the dawn of day. Upon it will come. This is a redemption ere the setting of the sun.
Bo ha'erev, like erev ba. Okay.
Nachon.
Yפה.
Pidyon is
Redemption. A pidyon
yeah.
is when you redeem, like
Yeah,
pidyon
yeah.
ben.
Right.
It's like it's.
Matai sukat shlomecha aleinu tigale. When will be revealed sukat shalom, right? That's אז זה מאוד מעניין, כי בתחילת קום המדינה, או בשנים שאחרי, גם אלה שהיו חילונים, secular Israelis, גם שאבו, they, לשאוב means to,
Drew from.
yeah, to draw, like לשאוב מים, thank you, to draw their inspiration, גם מהתפילות שלנו, וגם מהתנ"ך, מה שהיום פחות אצל זמרים חילונים, you know, secular Jews, much less will they draw on our ritual, our liturgy, and our text.
אבל זה מעניין, כי לוקחים קודם נעילה, ואחר כך מדברים על סוכות.
Well, no, it's not really Sukkot, it's Sukkot Shalom, like
I
Erev Shabbat.
I think it's related. I think it's
You do?
clever.
Yeah.
So Yom Kippur and Sukkot. Oh, yeah, that's true. You're right. Good point. I wonder when it was written. What time of year?
I don't know.
Okay, אז זה...
And also, what year was it written? Do we have that info?
We do, but we have to look it up.
Okay.
Google has it. We just have to ask Google. But we have Beth. Beth will be our Google person. Okay. אז זה שיר אחד. אני יודעת שכבר 9:45. Judy, we lost your picture and we lost your sound. אז זה שיר אחד. יש עוד שיר. רוצים את השיר השני? רוצים? Yeah? Okay. השיר השני הרבה יותר שמח.
השיר התפרסם בשנת 1974.
אז לא למדתי.
יום הכיפורים.
זהו. יפה. So maybe it was. So maybe I learned it in 73, 74. You're right, not 72. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That actually makes sense. Wow.
Wow.
Okay. Beautiful. Okay. It makes a difference,
Beautiful.
right? To know when it was written.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, welcome Candace, ברוכה הבאה. Okay, בואו נמשיך לשני. I love, 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 love this song. Just saying. רגע.
שם הרי גולן באופק ניצבים עוד בדממה ונערים בהולם דופק עוד שומרים על הרמה וביושבם עם ערב סביב למדורה עונים הם לך כנרת בשירה שירי לי כנרת שיר מזמור ישן שירי
מה אתם חושבים על השיר הזה? אני ממש ממש אוהבת את השיר הזה. שירי לי כנרת. זה שיר אהבה לים כנרת. מה?
It's a love song.
It's a love song, ממש יפה. ואני למדתי את השיר הזה, כי למדתי את הריקוד, בריקודי עם, one of the movements, you kind of shuffle your foot, you kind of sort of drag it on the floor, and that's supposed to be like the sound of the waves or the sound of the, you know, it's supposed to mimic the sound of the כנרת. אני גרתי בחיפה כמה וכמה שנים, ובשבילנו אפילו יום שישי, שלא עבדנו בימי שישי, בארץ עובדים ראשון, שני, שלישי, רביעי, חמישי בדרך כלל, וביום שישי לפעמים היינו קמים מוקדם, לוקחים את הבן שלנו ונוסעים צפונה לכנרת, וחוזרים מספיק זמן לפני שבת, וזה היה אחד הדברים הרגילים שהיינו עושים, וזה היה באמת זיכרונות טובים. אז מי מתנדב? בית, אולי נבקש ממך שנעבור, מכיוון שאין לנו הרבה זמן. Nothing about you, Judy. We just need to do quickly. You did a great job on that other one. כל הכבוד, במיוחד בלי ניקוד. אז בואי נעבור על המילים, גם מילים כל כך יפות, and I just couldn't leave us with ללכת שבי אחרייך, because it's a beautiful song, but it's also a harder song.
זה גם כן, לך מדבר אחרייך, זה גם ממוסף של...
ללכת שבי אחרייך?
לא.
Look it up, you'll let us know.
Okay, I'll get back to you on that.
I believe, yeah,
Sure.
get back to me. No, but
It's a variation. It's a no.
Okay.
לך אחריי, לך במדבר אחריי.
לכתך אחריי במדבר, את מתכוונת?
כן, אני...
יפה, גם יכול להיות. But ללכת שבי אחרייך, again, it's a phrase, I just don't know if that phrase was coined by them. Okay, בבקשה.
אוקיי, שם הרי גולן...
So רגע, אני רוצה, שנייה, sorry, אני רוצה להביא, or something, את תשומת לבכם, להסב את תשומת לבכם, שיש כאן גם מילים משירים אחרים. שם הרי גולן, דנן על שקיים וגבן. נכון, אז אנחנו כולם מכירים שם הרי גולן. אז עכשיו היא אומרת, שם הרי גולן באופק. What is the אופק? It's a horizon. אז שם הרי גולן, that song, וזה נכון, הרי מהכנרת רואים את הרי הגולן. So I love that. אוקיי, בבקשה תמשיכי.
שם הרי גולן באופק, ניצבים עוד בדממה.
מה זה ניצבים? זה כמו פרשת ניצבים. נכון, but עומדים like at attention.
Right.
That's what ניצב. By the way, in Hebrew, the ניצב is the perpendicular. In geometry, it's the one, I don't know what it's called in English because I learned it in Hebrew, but it's the one that's perpendicular to the base, let's say, of the triangle. It makes a right angle. So it's no, it's not a right angle. Right angles is zavit yishara. It's not called a right angle, it's called a straight angle. Zavit yishara is a 90 ma'alot, 90 degrees. But the line that creates the 90 degrees...
Is that the hypotenuse?
No, the hypotenuse is the third. No, right. No. It's the nitzav, it's the perpendicular. I think it's perpendicular. Yeah. I think that's what it is. בכל מקרה, זה נקרא ניצב. And it's the same thing because you're standing straight and at attention. Okay, ניצבים עוד בדממה. מה זה דממה?
בשקט.
נכון. Actually in ממש silence. כן, בבקשה.
Okay, ונערים בהולם.
ונערים, actually.
ונערים. בהולם דופק.
No, בהולם דופק.
בהולם דופק, מה זה?
So helem is shock, dofek is the pulse. So I don't know if it means fast pulsed or I'm actually not 100% sure. Holem dofek. Or they're fast paced there because they're so mitrakshim. Holem, yeah, holem is appropriate or suitable. The holem. No. So it's like to strike or beat rapidly. So yeah. So I think they're mitrakshim, so their pulse is rapid. Holem dofek. Yeah.
עוד שומרים על הרמה.
נכון, על רמת הגולן. הם שומרים בנערים, כי אז באמת היו רק חיילים. בהולם דופק עוד שומרים על הרמה. They're watching, they're guiding it for us. וביושבם, כשהם חוזרים, בבקשה תמשיכי.
וביושבם עם ערב, סביב למדורה.
Oh, no, not חוזרים, sorry, when they sit around the מדורה.
עם ערב, בסביב למדורה, עונים הם לך כנרת בשירה.
כן, אז so עונים, it's interesting, זה כמו בתן להם מרים, are they answering a question? כאילו שהם בשיח עם הכנרת, which is so beautiful, because the כנרת אף פעם לא לגמרי שקט, תמיד יש איזשהו, right, you hear the lapping of the waves, זה כל כך יפה, this beautiful imagery, עונים הם לך כנרת, כאילו שאנחנו כל הזמן בשיח, ביחד עם הכנרת. אוקיי.
שירי לי כנרת, שיר מזמור ישן, שירי לי כנרת, שיר לי הגולן, שירי לי כנרת, שיר מזמור ישן, שירי לי כנרת, שיר לי הגולן.
אוקיי, אני צריך להסביר? נראה לי לא צריך. בבקשה. מה זה דוגית? You could maybe guess.
It's a fisherman's boat?
It's a fisherman's boat, exactly. It
But
maybe
there's
has a name.
a
Oh, it
concept.
has a name. How do you pronounce D-I-N-G-H-Y?
Say again?
Dinghy.
Dinghy, a dinghy or a skiff
Oh,
or
dingy.
a canoe.
A dinghy.
Dinghy.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if it was dingy or well, dingy is without the H, I guess. A
Yeah,
dinghy, so
dinghy.
it's a small boat. Dag. It's so clear. It's a fisherman's boat. You could figure it out.
ויש שיר על דוגית גם כן.
נכון, I think you're right.
דוגית נוסעת, משהו.
נכון, יפה. אז יש, כל הזמן לוקחים משירים מוכרים אחרים. בבקשה. מה זה עודנה שטה?
Still sails?
Yes. So mashotim are these.
Oars.
The oars, yeah.
Mhm.
Odena shata, adayin shata is still sailing.
Sail, yeah. מפרסה.
No. Mifrasa, hamifras shela, it's sail.
מפרסה. מלבין בחוף.
Malbin, מה זה
מלבין
malbin?
בחוף.
It's gorgeous. This is my favorite 3 lines from 3 words or whatever. Mifrasa malbin bachof. So what is in the word malbin? By the way, malbin is bleach in Israel today.
Whitens.
Yeah, so it's malbin bachof means that as it's sailing in, it dots the chof with white, right? It's such a beautiful poetic way. Its sail dots the chof with white. Malbin, it creates whiteness, but of course in Hebrew it's poetic. Mifrasa malbin bachof. Ken.
Are they sailing or are they rowing?
No, I just said mashotim are oars. I think it's a sailboat because the mifras is a sail.
Right.
Like, oh, the yesh mifras lavan ba'ofek, da 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 da, kol shenevakesh lu yehi. Familiar with that song?
Mm-hmm.
So, oh, the yesh mifras lavan ba'ofek. There is still another white sail in the horizon. Okay.
והנה עוד שיר, וחושת האוקליפטוס.
נכון, חושת האקליפטוס, הגשר הסירה, וריח המלוח על המים. אבל זה לא על הכנרת, כי ריח מלוח, a salty smell, the Kinneret is sweet water.
Right. עוד שומרת על הנוף.
So how beautiful. חושת האקליפטוס is a eucalyptus grove, and is still guarding and watching over the view, Hanof, right? It's as if they're standing and there are guard. I just love the pictorial, the visual, the imagery that it brings up.
Okay. Et nifreshet reshet.
No, nifreset.
Et nifreset reshet.
Lifros means to spread out. Like lifros mapa means to spread out the tablecloth. Nifreset reshet is when the net that they use to gather in right? Nifreset imshoch hase'ara. I think it's when it's over, like when it dies down. Let me just find the right word. Shoch is cessation. Se'ara is a storm.
Okay. Onim hemlach kineret bashira.
Bishira.
Bishira.
So I don't know what hem is, the chosha, the eucalyptus, the dugio, I don't know, but onim hem bishira. Bakasha. Tamshichi hayarden.
Hayarden magain.
No.
Hayarden no gain.
Symphonia. Plays musically.
Yeah,
a symphony. Like Menagen, yeah.
Im alfei het tziporim.
Yep, with the thousands of birds. You should know it's known as a bird watching paradise. The north over there, over Kinneret, v'gam Emakachula beikar. Ken hayarden nogen symphonia im alfei tziporim. That's how you have a symphony. Hayarden, the Jordan River, a symphony is with there's many voices. As kan yesh alfei tziporim. Bakasha.
Okay, uveyachad beharmonia.
Harmony.
Manginim umizamrim. Minagnim umizamrim.
As menagen is to play an instrument, b'mizamrim is to zemer. It's lashir, b'diuk.
V'yeladim b'tiveria b'sha'at shi'or zimra onim hemlach kineret bashira.
Oh, I love that. Ken yeladim ktanim sharim. Just imagining the voices of children. Kach yafe, kach idyllic. The pastorali, which is in Hebrew like a pastoral view of something. It's just so beautiful and peaceful, like the opposite really of the previous song. Shehaya yoter al chayalim ve'al kama ze kashe. וזה קצת להביא גם יום הזיכרון וגם את יום העצמאות לתוך השעה שלנו ביחד. אני אשאיר לכם. שם הרי גולן באופק, ניצבים עוד מדממה, ונהרים בהולם דופק, עוד שומרים על הרמה, וביושבם עם ערב סביב למדורה, עונים הם לך כנרת בשירה. שירי לי כנרת, שיר מזמור ישן, שירי לי כנרת, שיר לי הגולן, שירי לי כנרת, שיר מזמור ישן, שירי לי כנרת, שיר לי הגולן.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, really is. Two beautiful, beautiful songs. Oh, a lot of people came on while we were sharing the screen. Baruchim habayim, welcome everybody. We switched our usual Hebrew class to sing and learn about two songs, Israeli songs, one for Yom HaZikaron, one for Yom Ha'atzmaut. And
is this Rabbi Stephen's class today?
it will be in a moment when he gets on. Yes, we're just finishing Rabbani Bracha's class, the Hebrew class. So in a minute, Stuart. I would like to pass the baton over. Bernie, may I pass it over to you? Oh, excellent.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernie. Okay. All right, my friends. Thank you
All right,
for
thanks, everybody.
extending Yom HaZikaron and Yom Ha'atzmaut just a teeny bit more. It kind of, flowed into today as we talk about the Kinneret flowing. So I'll leave you just with the Pizmon. Shiri li Kinneret, shir mizmor yashan. Shiri li Kinneret, shir li hagolan. Shiri li Kinneret, shir mizmor yashan. Shiri li Kinneret, shir li hagolan. Sending love to all. Have a good
Bye,
day.
Rachel.
Take care of
Thank you.
yourselves.
Okay.
They were unmuted.
Okay.
Oh. Right, Stephen? Yes.
No, I'm lazy.
Late. It was always late. It was always late. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's not okay, but it's okay.
Oh, yeah, ladies. Ladies. Oh, oh, you kidding. Okay. 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 Oh, are we not there yet? No? All right, Steve, not there yet? The way it goes. All right. Uh, uh, all right. Hello? Anybody there? Rabbi Stephen, you there? No? Anybody there?
Yeah, but I'm not sure we have a class.
All right, we have a class. I'm always going to Rabbi Stephen's class.
Mr. Olson, he's not here yet. We'll let you know when he comes.
Oh, is Bernie?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. We used, every Saturday before, we used to have the parsing class a long time ago, and we lived far further away. Stiglitz, Bernie Frankel, and all these other people live far away. And Rabbi lived across the street. We're always there 15 minutes before Peter Stiglitz. There 15 minutes before a rabbi. He's always late. Okay. Yeah. I lived about a mile and a half away. It was 3 miles away. We're always there first. Anyway, okay. Maybe he's preparing his Russia. Okay. We used to come 8:15.
Okay, Rabbi Exler is here now.
Hi, Bernie.
Okay.
Everybody.
Hey, Bernie, you're always late as usual. I love you.
Late as usual.
Yes. You remember that Parsha class every Saturday morning? We were over there. We live far away, and you live right across the street. And I know you're probably preparing your notes. That's why. But we would say we used to come. We always live the furthest away. We used to live the furthest away, and you always came 5 or 10 minutes late. You remember that?
I remember it. I have fond memories of coming late, all the way up to the present moment. And you were always there before, Mr. Olson, holding down the fort. Okay.
Everybody was always late. Peter, I always thought Peter Singer, Marvin Stieglitz, Guy Richardson, so all those other people. Everybody lived far away. Even Bill from the base HaZikaron, he was far away.
That's right.
That's
right.
And we say you're preparing your notes. That's why.
That's right. Cramming, we call it cramming. I still do that too. Okay, we're ready to get started. Good morning, everybody. We've got a great group in person. Just make their way around. And we've got a great group on Zoom.
And a guy from
and by phone. I'm going to put everybody on mute just to get us started. And you can always unmute yourself, *6 on the phone or the microphone icon on your computer screen. We're picking up in the middle of chapter 8, which was a good place to pause because chapter 8, verse 13 begins the Haftarah for Tisha B'Av morning with the words Asof Asifim. And hopefully we will finish chapter 8 today, although I'm not sure that we'll get to the end of the Haftarah, which goes through close to the end of chapter 9, goes to chapter 9, verse 23. And I'll just, in case we don't get there today, I just want to make one little note about something we often comment on, which is the relationship between the chapter divisions in the Tanakh as we have it, which was, I believe, a medieval Christian breakdown of the text, and the paragraph section breaks, which are much more ancient rabbinic breakdown of the text. And so the Haftarah that for Tisha B'Av, it doesn't follow the chapter breaks, it follows section breaks. And we can see that it begins after a little section break in verse 13. I'll share my screen for those on Zoom to see. You can see it here right before verse 13. It's actually interesting to note the difference in the JPS Tanakh. There's a little samech at the end of verse 12. On ours, there's a little pei. Those are actually different notations, and I'm not sure why they're not the same here. But either way, the samech or the pei, one way or another, denotes a kind of a paragraph break or section break. So here in the middle of chapter 8, we have the beginning of a new section. Starts with Asof Asifim, translated here as I will make an end of them. But of course, the footnote tells us meaning of Hebrew uncertain, and we'll come back to that. And this Haftarah goes all the way through the conclusion of chapter 8, picks up, continues with the beginning of chapter 9. And we can see, by the way, if you look at chapter 8, verse 23, and chapter 9, verse 1, the English starts chapter 8, verse 23, oh, that my head were water, and starts chapter 9, verse 1, oh, to be in the desert. And the Hebrew is even more clear about the literary connection between these two verses. Verse 23 in Hebrew starts, mi yitain, who would give that? And chapter 9, verse 1 is mi yitneni, who would place me, so to speak. And so we can see that from the last verse of chapter 8 and the first verse of chapter 9 have the same, semantic introduction, the same essentially words starting the two of them. Doesn't mean that it's unreasonable to break a chapter there, but it means that there's a close connection between these two. So it's natural that a Haftorah reading might continue straight on, keeping this sort of theme that bridges between the end of chapter 8 and the beginning of chapter 9. And it goes on all the way to sort of end the gloom and doom message in verse 21. Now we're on page 1032, just getting the contours of the Haftarah for Tisha B'Av, chapter 9, verse 21, which ends with Me'acharei hakotzer ve'ein ma'asef, or Ucha'amir me'acharei hakotzer ve'ein ma'asef, like sheaves behind the reaper with none to pick them up. Ein ma'asef. If you remember, what we said was that chapter 8, verse 13 began with Asof Asifim. I shall surely gather them in, make an end of them. And here we have Ein Me'asef. There is no one to gather them up or pick them up. So this creates the bookends for the Haftarah, or for the core message of the Haftarah. The Haftarah goes on 2 more verses, chapter 9, verses 22 and 23, which have a more hopeful ending. That's sort of a postscript to the Haftarah. But the core message of the Haftarah, from chapter 8, verse 13, through chapter 9, verse 22, is bracketed by this root of Aleph Samech Fei, which we're going to see and discuss, and sort of bridges the chapter break between chapter 8 and chapter 9 with this term of mi yitain, mi yitneni, this hope or wish, or if only it could be type of expression. So that's just to give us the contours in case we don't get through all the text today. Okay, so we did read through the end of chapter 8 already, but let's refresh our memory with the second half of chapter 8. Again, it's not the entirety of the Tisha B'Av Haftarah, but just as our usual custom is still to go chapter by chapter, we're going to refresh our memory by reading the second half of chapter 8. We'll discuss it, and then if there's time, we'll go on to the beginning of chapter 9. Okay, got a great group here. Vivian, would you start off by reading? I will make an end of them.
I will make an end of them, declares the Lord.
No
grapes left on the vine, no figs on the fig tree, the leaves all withered. Whatever I've given them is gone. Why are we sitting by? Let us gather into the fortified cities and meet our doom there. For the Lord our God has doomed us. He has made us drink a bitter draught because we sinned against the Lord. We hoped for good fortune, but no happiness came. For a time of relief. Instead, there is terror. The snorting of their horses was heard from Dan. At the loud neighing of their steeds, the whole land quaked. They came and devoured the land and what was in it, the towns and those who dwelt in them. Lo, I will send serpents against you, adders that cannot be charmed, and they shall bite you, declares the Lord. When in grief I will seek comfort, my heart is sick within me. Is not the Lord in Zion? Is not her king within her? Why then do they anger me with their images, with alien futilities? Hark, the outcry of my poor people from the land far and wide. Harvest is past, summer is gone, but we have not been saved, because my people is shattered. I am shattered. I am dejected, seized by desolation. There is no balm in Gilead. Can no physician be found? Why has healing not yet come to my poor people? Oh, that my head were water, my eyes a fount of tears. Then would I weep day and night for the slain of my poor people.
Okay, we'll pause there. I'm just going to point out a couple of things, then open up for comments, and then time permitting, we'll go on to chapter 9. So there's a kind of a double irony to this first verse, verse 13, in the language of Asof Asifim. I will translate it here as I will make an end of them, I will gather them in, says the Lord. No grapes left in the vine, no figs on the fig tree, the leaves are all withered, whatever I have given them is gone. So on the one hand, the language of gathering in usually is a hopeful language, right? We talk about using a different verb about kibbutz galuyot, gathering in the exiles, right? So in some sense, there's an ironic reversal here. The gathering in is sort of gathering them in to make an end of them, almost play a little bit on the language that's sometimes used biblically to describe death, which is the sense there, the way it's used is that a biblical character will say, I'm going to be gathered unto my people, right? I will sort of join the eternal history of my ancestors in death. Ani ne'esaf el ami, I'm being gathered unto my people. That's a little sort of gentler, but here the gathering in is not an ingathering of the exiles, but it's a sort of gathering in for death. And then there's also the irony that probably the most frequent language I think of le'esof has to do with a harvest, right? We call the holiday Chag HaAsif, the harvest festival for Sukkot. And so the idea of instead of actually gathering in the harvest, it's the people who are being gathered in for their, to meet their demise. And it's heightened by the contrast in the second half of the verse. There's no agriculture, there's no produce to gather in. There are no grapes on the vine, there are no figs on the fig tree. The leaves are withered. The people have no harvest to gather because that is also a dimension of punishment. The classical biblical punishment for not keeping the commandments is that the earth doesn't produce the way it's supposed to produce. So one punishment is you have nothing to gather. And the second punishment is you yourselves in some way are going to be gathered in. And whatever I have given you is gone. Va'eten lahem ya'avum. And now, and I think one of the challenges in this chapter is to try to discern the speaker, as we've seen sometimes, and in particular, when is it Jeremiah and when is it God? And that tension or ambiguity reminds us of the kind of way in which Jeremiah's personality identification, both with God and the Jewish people, comes up much more than we saw with Isaiah. Here, it seems to be Jeremiah speaking now, could theoretically be the response of the people, but it might be Jeremiah in verse 14, sort of responding, saying, okay, what choice do we have at this point? God has decreed, and so Alma nachnu yoshvim, what are we kind of sitting around for? Heasfu, now we have that verb again, Aleph Samech Fe, and here it's almost a sort of a responsive, acceptance. Let's gather ourselves in to the fortified cities and meet our doom there. The Nidma Sham, there we will kind of just become nothingness. So it seems to be Jeremiah relaying God's message to the people in verse 13 and then saying, okay, we have to accept it. So no point in even going about our business. Let's kind of gather in and await our fate. Because God has doomed us, made us drink a bitter draught, ki chatanu la'Hashem, because we sinned against the Lord, and then sort of expressing further, we hoped for good fortune, but no happiness came. We hope for this time of relief. Instead, there is terror. And I'm not sure how to read this verse. Is Jeremiah kind of criticizing that hope as unrealistic? We kept walking around. Is it sort of a continuation of some of the things that we've seen as a critique of the people in the previous chapters? They said shalom, shalom, ve'ein shalom. They complacently assumed everything was fine, but really nothing was fine. Is it Jeremiah sort of saying that? Yeah, we walked around, obliviously expecting things to be okay, but nothing was, thinking that a time of relief was going to come. And instead there was terror. Or is there some more of a sense that no, we were doing what we were supposed to be doing, and yet we are sort of surprised to find this punishment? I'm inclined towards the former, but it's not totally clear. Then verse 16 and 17, the snorting of their horses was heard from Dan, and the loud neighing of their steed. At the loud neighing of their steeds, the whole land quaked. They came and devoured the land and what was in it, the towns and those who dwelt in them. Not totally clear whose horses these are coming from Dan. And then the accompanying verse, I will send serpents against you and they shall bite you, declares the Lord. It's worth taking a moment to look at a verse. I think it's Rabbeinu Lau who suggests the connection between what I'm about to show you and our verses here. If we turn back to Parashat Vayechi, to Jacob's blessings, let's see, page 108, if you have a Tanakh in front of you, and for those of us following at home, I'll try to open it on the screen. Hold on a moment. I hear Toby already intuited the answer here and knew the answer here. Okay, so in Jacob's blessings, deathbed blessings to his children, he says in verse 17 of chapter 49, so page 108 towards the top in our brown Tanakh, so you can see it here on the screen. Yehi dan nachash ale derech shefifon ale orach hanoshech ikvei sus vayipol rochvo achol. So Dan is supposed to be this serpent by the road who bites the horse's heel so that his rider is thrown backwards. So when the Jewish people are achieving their mission or vision or goals, then you have Dan who represents this snake who bites the attacking horse and causes its rider to fall backwards. It's a kind of an underdog sort of thing. Even when the Jewish people are kind of outnumbered by chariots and horsemen, they can, just like that snake at the heel, bite and overcome the odds and defeat that horse. And here we're sort of seeing the kind of double opposite. Now the punishment is from Dan, where who's supposed to be the snake that bites the horse that overthrows the rider. Sounds like Chad Gadya. Here we have horses that are not being overthrown by snakes. And not only that, snakes are also turning to be the kind of enemy or attacker of the Jewish people. So there's, in the connection between Dan, horses, and snakes, it's hard not to sort of think about this as a kind of indication of the unraveling or undoing or reversal of what Jacob was promising, his descendants, their roles would be. So that in that trio of horses, snakes, and the tribe of Dan, we can kind of go back to that spot and see. And of course, also, I think it's also a reference to other times where plagues of snakes, in the book of Bamidbar, came against the Jewish people, and ultimately when they lifted up their eyes to God, there was a resolution, and they were saved from that plague. And here, we're being told that option seems to be foreclosed. There's nothing you can do to stop this plague which is coming. Just a couple more verses. Verse 18, a very challenging Hebrew to translate, but we'll just take it as it is in front of us here. When in grief I would seek comfort, my heart is sick within me. Again, this is presumably Jeremiah. That end language in verse 18, my heart is sick within me, libi davai, is very Lamentations, very Eicha language. Again, not surprising. We've seen many places where the text of Jeremiah and the text of Eicha intersect, strengthening and undergirding the rabbinic interpretation that Jeremiah himself was the author of the scroll of Eicha, of Megillat Eicha, and of course then the additional connection that Eicha is read on Tisha B'Av, and this is the Haftarah of Tisha B'Av. So we're particularly choosing for the Haftarah of Tisha B'Av a Jeremiah passage that includes echoes of Megillat Eicha. So we have that seeming to be in Jeremiah's own words, expressing kind of his heart sickness. And then this verse 19, where we imagine this to be kind of the futile cry of both the Jewish people, and then it seems also, or Jeremiah, and then God's answer, it seems like. Right? Is not the Lord in Zion? Is not her king within her? Meaning, in these moments, the question is, where is God? Why is God not responding? And then we seem to sort of continue to God's question. Well, why did they anger me with their images, their pisileihem, their idols, havlei nechar, alien futilities, right? So it's a classic Jewish move to answer a question with a question, right? The question is, where is God? And God's answer is, why do you persist in your idolatry? And then now the translation here in verse 19 reverses the order of the verse and sort of puts the cry of the people as introducing the next section. It's an interesting interpretive choice. And the call continues. Avar katzir kala kaitz. Harvest is past, summer is gone, but we have not been saved. And again, sort of it reflects back. Harvest is past. Was there even a successful harvest? It seems like probably not. I imagine they're sort of saying the harvest season passed, and we're still suffering from drought. We haven't been saved agriculturally. May also be saying we're coming to kind of the end of the annual cycle of the year, and there's no, another year goes by or this seasons go by without deliverance. And then again, it seems like in these last verses, we come back to Jeremiah's lament. Remember, in the beginning of this section, he was saying to the people, listen, your fate is sealed. Our fate is sealed. Let's just go into the city and await our demise. But now we have kind of his internal emotional reaction. Al shever bat ami hoshbarti. Because my people is shattered, and the English translates well here, preserving the fact that this verb is repeated, first the noun and then the verb. Because my people is shattered, or over the shattering of my people, I have been shattered. Kadarti, I'm dejected. Shama hechazikatni, desolation. That's from the shama, like shemama, a kind of a desolation. Desolation has taken strong hold of me. And then this again, these unanswerable questions. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no imrofe ein sham? Is there no healer? Like even maybe a play on the fact that going all the way back to Exodus, God says, Ani Hashem rofecha, right? I will be your healer. And so maybe capital R, capital Resh, is God not going to step in to heal in this moment? Why has Madua lo alta aruchat batami? Again, a key Jeremiah and Eicha language, the language of Batami, my poor people. And then this last verse, which plays on a theme that we find in other texts, biblical, and especially developed more in later liturgical and poetic texts, this idea of not having adequate, even if we could make ourselves as expansive as some natural phenomenon or something like that, we wouldn't be able to fully express the emotion that we feel. Sometimes we say that, in their liturgy in the positive, even if all the, can't remember the particular examples, but all the C's were ink and all the whatever were quills, there wouldn't be enough to express our gratitude to God or our praise of God. We have those kinds of things, in the Nishmat and in Akdamot that we're going to read on Shavuot. Here it's in the negative or pessimistic, right? If only my head were water, I would need my whole head to be water. My small tear ducts are not enough to do the job. I would need my whole head to be water and my eyes an entire fountain of tears. Only then, or if even, would that be enough in order to sufficiently weep the slain of my poor people. And here, as opposed to the fate, anticipated, it seems like now we maybe already have seen a destruction, and we're weeping for chalalei, the actual fallen, the slain, the corpses of my poor people. And so we have Yirmiyahu kind of almost expressing he can't cry enough. This, just on one other liturgical note, this phrase, mi tein roshi mayim, also has a Tisha B'Av link, because it's the opening of the Kina, the elegy that's read on Tisha B'Av, if I remember correctly, that was written by the Maharam Rotenberg over the various crusades that impacted the communities, if I'm remembering right, I have to double check it, that impacted the communities of Ashkenaz, of the Rhineland. So this sense of across history, we have this need to kind of weep beyond measure for destructions that take place is, of course, a Tisha B'Av theme. And so the many connections between this Haftarah, between Eicha, and between the themes of the other liturgy of Tisha B'Av all emerge here. Okay, I'll pause for any questions or comments. And let me just generate my list here. I see Estelle, Ruby, Rita, quiet on Zoom. Lance. Okay. Oh, okay, Mr. Olson, I'm adding you to the list. You are entered into the list. So we got Estelle, Ruby, Rita, Lance, and Mr. Olson. We're going to go in that order. Go ahead, Estelle.
I find this, I think I know I've said this before, but I find it very difficult that there can be no exceptions. And I find this is not human. It's not the way people are. And to have mass punishment without the acknowledgement of exceptions, frankly, I think Jeremiah is off his beam.
Yeah. But I don't have anything to add to our regular give and take on this question. This is sort of the extreme version, and it does not take the time or space to acknowledge anyone who might not have been caught up in this wrongdoing. It's no question about it. It's tough to swallow and room for critique. So absolutely. Go ahead, Ruby.
Do not wish to in any way question Jeremiah. Who am I to in any way do that? However, it is typical in Tanakh that whenever there is calamity, whether there's war, famine, etc., that the prophet and people maintain that it's God who is determining it, rather than basic human earthly outcomes that we are to expect at times.
Right.
Why is this always so directed in that way?
Great question. And to me, I think the short answer, coming from a certain angle, is that is basic biblical theology, right? So I'll try to give the answer coming from two ways. One, that's basic biblical theology. So you go all the way back to the second paragraph of the Shema, which tells us if you don't keep the commandments, the rains are not going to come in their time, etc., etc. What are the pros and cons of a theology like that, right? On the one hand, it gives people a sense of control over all the things that feel uncontrollable in the world. If you just wake up, don't worry, I'm going to say the other side too. If you wake up in the morning and you say, why is there no rain? Why is there drought? There's nothing I can do. I'm just a victim of the forces of nature. One way to think about that is that's tremendously disempowering and makes it hard to live a life just at the whims of the natural world. But if you accept and believe that, well, it's because I didn't do the right thing, and if I repent and do the right thing, then the rains will come. And if you have sufficiently lived in a world in which it actually looks like that, which it's hard to imagine because it doesn't feel like our world looks like that. And for sure, it's hard to, sitting where we sit, imagine that the world ever looked like that. But somehow in the framework of biblical theology, people experienced it enough, it seems like, that they did to some degree buy into that theology. Then you feel like you can impact the great forces, the frightening forces of the world around you by improving your ways. Now, again, it's really hard to swallow because for sure, if people believe that, they probably did repent, and then there was still some drought, and then what did they do? And then they cried out things like, where is God? Is our king not in Zion? We're doing what we're supposed to be doing. Oh Lord, why have you abandoned us? And you have that give and take, which is ongoing. That's okay. Friends are passing through. We're actually delighted to welcome our Chaverim from Rikma a program of YCT and Partners in Israel, which welcomes Israeli Rabbanim and Rabbaniyot to do some training in Israel, and then get a trip to America to we're so happy you're here. We get a chance to learn with our friends over Shabbat, and so we're delighted to have them. And Mori v'Rabbi v'Yedidi Milai, great to see you. Great to see you.
Thank you so much.
One of our great teachers. So yes.
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Olson, hold on a second. Ruby's just responding. We're still on this topic, so bear with us. I'm going to repeat what she said. Don't worry.
It seems to be because you haven't done, because therefore. It's not, I don't feel that balance, and I would like to feel that balance.
Right. So in our day and age, I mean, the biblical theology still holds for some people, and they say, well, if the world is bad, it must still be because we're sinning, et cetera, et cetera. And for some people, that's a preferable choice to the choice of bad things happen. There's nothing I can do about it. I still got to strive to be the best person I can be. But I know in the end of the day, I have very little control. I have no control over the forces of nature. What does that mean for a relationship with God? So, and I'm not taking a side here. I mean, you probably know my side. I incline towards the latter, which is, that we have no way of making sense of most of what happens in the world. And if there is a divine explanation, it's far beyond our understanding. And there's a sort of a little bit of a separation between, our sense of cause and effect and the classic biblical theology.
Oh, yeah.
Hold on, Mr. Olson, we're still going. I'm so thankful for your just patience and bearing with us, because we're going to got a few more comments ahead of you. But don't forget anything you want to say, because we want to hear it. So Ruby, all that is just to say, I agree with you. It's tremendously challenging. And, I think also in an ancient world, and this is something Rav Lichtenstein writes about, I'm trying to remember, in one of the volumes of his writing, there's sort of a extended interview with him. And he really drives this point home that, in a world with less developed, I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but in a world with less developed or less accurate science, the world of the ancient world, people even more felt a need to try to, explain phenomenon that they could not understand with some sense of control or connection to it. Now, we still don't have by any means a total understanding, but we understand to some degree meteorology and geology and seismology, and we know that earthquakes do happen, I don't know, say for a reason, but we understand the system within which earthquakes happen and tsunamis happen and storms happen. We can still ask the question, how in a world with a beneficent God could those things happen? But at least we understand the mechanisms of their happening, and that sort of provides therefore less impetus or need almost for a biblical theology that links it to our behavior. But it's still, I think, there remain pros and cons, and every person in their own community and psyche will migrate towards towards or be drawn towards one or the other, or some blend or some point on the spectrum of that theology. All right, Rita, you're up next. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, well, I was wondering, in Tanakh, in the whole of Tanakh, is there anywhere that there's a positive look? I mean, we've been learning it, and so far I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering.
Yeah, it's you can tell that we're deep into Jeremiah to get a question like that, because for sure there are even within Jeremiah, and we're going to get there at the end of this Haftarah, there are absolutely positive depictions. I think you're right. They're mostly future looking, in other words, or ironically sort of future looking or past looking, right? I always come back to this verse we've referenced it a number of times, where God says, I remember the kindness of your youth when you followed me into the wilderness, right? So God has sometimes nostalgic appreciation of our behavior in the past, and God sometimes often has a description of a better future. But how often does God actually say, or the prophet say, you guys are doing a great job. You're really, living up to your mission as a Jewish people. You're protecting the needy and the vulnerable. You're doing kindness to your fellow neighbor. There for sure were. Yeah. I mean, and of course, I think, Arnie, may he continue to have a refuah shlema, is, somebody who often would point this out, in the parent analogy of relationship, a parent, it's their job, yes, to offer discipline, yes, to point out areas for growth. But we know in relationships, that's usually much more effective when there is positive feedback, whenever there is positive behavior, even if it's not reaching the full, complement of what we want. We still say, okay, great. You stayed at the table for all of dinner tonight. You can tell what we talk about in our house. You stayed at the table for all of dinner tonight. Terrific job. All right, then you laid on the ground for a while and didn't go to the bath. But still, I'm proud of you. I can provide a lot of examples from the current moment. You screamed and yelled, but then you put your clothes on. So great. Thanks for putting your clothes on and getting dressed this morning, right? So we want to give positive feedback when there's positive feedback to give. I think it really is an interesting question. Where is that in the Tanakh? And I want to think more about that. I would like to take that as a challenge to myself to locate, if there is to locate, some examples of real-time positive feedback. So I'm jotting that as a note for myself. So thank you. Okay, Lance, you're up.
Yeah. Okay. Alicia and the Shunammite woman and the widow's pot of oil. What I'd like to point out, however, is there is what's called in by professors today, upward arcs and downward arcs. And my understanding is that in Vayechi, you have a kind of upward arc that you were talking about in Genesis, and you have another downward arc in Tanakh, in the Haftorah. Is that correct? Death of David?
Yeah, that sounds like a fair reading.
Okay, and just a couple of things. In that little paragraph with the me, the OO, there's a third me, and I also saw that in 9:1. There are three me's. We've got an aphra, the repetition of the same word. I have a dream, I have a dream, I have a dream. And this is poetry. Okay, this is poetry actually and prose mixed. There is no such thing as pure poetry. There's no such thing as pure prose. But anyway, the bottom line here for me is that this negativity, nattering nabobs of negativity in Jeremiah right here is clinical depression. And God is that parent you've been talking about, Rav Stephen. And I think you have one here, so I'd be careful what you say. But the point is in, let's say, Genesis, where there's an upward arc, or some of these, or in even Elisha and a Shunammite woman, there is magic. And the magic is, in my sense, mania. It's a delusion. Right. What we really need is reality testing. And that's what you don't have here.
All right. Fascinating work for reading the text, Lance. So thank you for that. And
okay.
We've got Mr. Olson up next. Go ahead, Mr. Olson.
Yeah. Two things. I'll start with the last thing. I'll say this. The head rewards. Now, you know what you know why it's important to have rewards in my real life?
Tell me.
You know why?
Tell me.
Because David Dinkins, when he became the mayor of New York, he was told to get rid of all the Jewish people, the Jewish lawyers, the last Jewish lawyers. And I was the head of the Emer Society. I was going to retire pretty soon. I was retired. I wanted this girl, Susan Roche, who was very about to take over my job. Roshi, right? Right? Roche, right? It's ironically, you see, and they had I go. She was very good. She was the last person. He had to get rid of her. So she was the last person. That's what David Dinkins after the Uncle Rosenbaum. You see what happened? That's why he never got elected again. Because what happened, Roshi, I wanted to use and everybody knew I wanted to lose Roshi. They take him on my job.
Okay, so you have on the name of your intended successor professionally, Roche and Roshi, and didn't come to pass. Yeah.
And the one guy said, "Oh, you know a lot of things. The most important thing you did was try to save the Emmett Society, which you couldn't save because the people didn't want to do it." Now, the second thing is, as they know, Bob and Gilead. Remember, 200 years before this thing happened, who was 400 years before? Who was in Gilead? Elijah, Elisha, Jephthah, all those people, the leaders that saved the Jews. You see, that's why there's no Bob and Gilead. Who are the leaders in Gilead? Galati, right? I always end my Shabbos by saying, Eliyahu Navi, Eliyahu Galadi.
Giladi, yes.
Yeah, so that's why, and that's why you say Bob and Gilead, because Gilead was the homes of the great leaders that try to save the Jewish people 400 years before that. They didn't learn anything with Ahab and Jezebel and those people like that who say that guys from Gilead and the idea that Elijah was for king, but Elisha was great too. They both saved people, and they both and even with Dan, what was Dan supposed to do with Yaakov? Dan was supposed to protect the Jewish people. You know, yes. He was the first. So all these things, all those years before doesn't count. Why did the Jewish people learn from Elijah, Elisha, all these people? That's why it doesn't make. Why did people learn from those things? 300 years, and of course, Susan Rhodes was the most important thing because the Messiah could be saved.
Yes, that's a beautiful interpretation, Mr. Olson. I've actually not seen it in the commentaries. I think it's a lovely interpretation that is there no balm in Gilead, can no physician be found, is a reference to Gileadite leaders of generations past, like Elijah, and so this question: where are our leaders to rescue us, and why are we not?
One thing else, one more thing else. I want to tell you something else. When I was president, there was a guy who took one place. His name was Elijah Gerard. He was coaching an Indian from India, and they let him go because he was too old. He was old. He was only 70 years old. He was still a great man, Elijah. I want to say I'll fight for you because I always fought until the boss would want to get rid of. Yes. I'll fight. He said no. I was going to fight to save the Seventh side, and that's what happened in the Jewish organization. Only one left was the Soul Frame Society. They were really good. But that's because we need Jewish representation in civil service.
Yes,
losing that.
I agree. We do need Jewish representation in civil service, no question. Thank you. All right, excellent. I think we have time. Oh, Elisheva, yes.
Ready?
Yeah, please.
Something that I always like to see in Tanakh are, which I thought was cool in one of the verses, are kind of insights into the cultural life.
Yes.
Like the kind of more mundane cultural life of the time, which I think in verse 17, you get something cool there.
Tell us.
Which is adders that cannot be charmed, which kind of gives us insight that there were snake charmers.
Yes, yes.
Which is like just this cool, like cultural, like that was a reference that people would understand. Like, I love those.
Yeah.
That like, I don't know, that like when we try to imagine what the civilization looked like, we can now on the streets put snake charmers.
Yes, yes, yeah. Beautiful, very evocative of, many of you know that our class over these years now is dedicated to the memory of Arthur and Bernice Schwartz. And Bernice, who would sit right next to me, I could picture her. She loved realia of the Tanakh. She would say, "Aha, we now see that there were snake charmers in biblical times." So very well noticed and pointed out. Thank you.
Did the Israelites believe in them?
That's a beautiful question. Did the Israelites believe in them? Well, I mean, is snake charming black magic or is it science? I don't know.
There's an excellent novel that goes through different religious leaders. I read it recently, and it frames motion as a snake charmer,
Uh-huh.
which is this excellent, like,
Right.
that he learned snake charming from Yitro, and it's
Mhm.
this really excellent portrayal of motion in
Mhm.
this novel.
Uh-huh.
Like, bring it back to reality, kind of.
Yes.
Like, to take the miracles and make them
Right.
kind of more based in this kind of novel that's based in reality.
Yeah.
It's this very cool thing.
Yeah, yeah, and that's clearly how it's even in the biblical text. That's how it starts, right? The plagues in Egypt start with Moses coming, and then Pharaoh calls his magicians, and they can do it too, right? And so there's really is some sense that these things were part of whatever cultural, magical practices were in practice at the time. All right, good. We'll go a couple more verses and then wrap up, just to break into chapter 9 a little further. So again, we see that link between the mi yitain, if only, and as we were chatting, I did double check. I was half correct about the Tisha B'Av elegy, the one that begins mi yitain roshi mayim. It was written for the destruction of the communities of the Rhineland, but it was not written by the Maharami Rotenberg. It was written by a different Kalonymus Paitan. So I got 50% credit on that one. Okay, so chapter 9 begins. I'll just read the first couple of verses and comment, and then we'll pause there. Oh, to be in the desert, at an encampment for wayfarers. Oh, to leave my people, to go away from them. For they are all adulterers, a band of rogues. They bend their tongues like bows. They are valorous in the land for treachery, not for honesty. They advance from evil to evil, and they do not heed me, declares the Lord. We'll take these two verses for now, and then I think wrap up. So if that end phrase at the end of verse 2, Ne'um Adonai, declares the Lord, presumably seems like it's going on the first two verses of the chapter, then even though I commented about chapter 8, verse 23 and chapter 9, verse 1 having this same, if only comment, but the speakers change. It's Jeremiah presumably saying, if only my head were water, I would weep for the slain of my poor people. Hard to imagine that's God. That seems like Jeremiah. But now God seems to respond almost in kind, not kind in kind, by saying, oh, if only I could leave my people, ezva et ami, right? I mean, this is exactly what the Jewish people sometimes say to God. Why have you abandoned us? Lama azavtani? Why did you leave us? It's a response in some sense to the promise that goes, all the way back to, go back to any patriarch, but I'm thinking in particular of things that God says to Yaakov, I will not abandon you. And here God is literally saying, but not ironically, but wistfully and yet not practically, I guess is what I would say. If only I could leave my people, right? The implication is actually I can't. I wish I could, but I can't. The covenant is the covenant. My commitment is my commitment. They're driving me crazy, and all I want to do is go somewhere else. But but I know that I'm bound to them. So I think there's, from the fact that God's response is this, again, kind of wistful, and that's not exactly the right word, but wishful response is both incredibly painful to hear God wanting to leave us, but also the fact that the implication seems to be that God can't do it in spite of everything, or has bound God's self not to do it in spite of everything, provides that sort of modicum of comfort within the context of this very non-comforting passage. And God's wish, I think, also relating to that, nostalgic period. It's interesting that God wants to be in the desert, right? Why doesn't God want to go to a spa, right? Why does God want to go to the desert? Well, maybe it's a place where God remembers the good relationship. So it's almost like, I'm going to leave you and I'm going to go back to the desert so I can sort of be alone with where we had our first date, go back, maybe remind myself of the good times. This is my homiletical, overread, but I think it's interesting. Why does God want to go specifically to abandon us into the desert, leave us and go to the desert? and go to this little Milon Orchim, encampment for wayfarers. What's that?
You're attributing reasons.
I'm always attributing reasons to God. God attributes reasons to God throughout the Tanakh, or the authors can attribute reasons to God throughout the Tanakh. So I'm just going along with the trend. So this is God's wish to be, placed in the wilderness in this encampment for wayfarers, to go away from God's own people. Why? Because, right, they are Mena'afim and Bogdim, right? These are languages specifically, doesn't just choose, idolaters or, sinners, but specifically they are unfaithful. They are the ones who are adulterers and, rogues, but the language in particular of Boged is traitors, is, maybe a more pointed translation. And so, because of all of that, God wants to get away from them. And then, hold on one second, I'll come to you in a moment. And their actions, and we've seen this very, very strong theme throughout Jeremiah, is sort of taking a behavior which would otherwise be good and applying it to bad, right? They, they bend their tongues like bows, right? They sort of exercise kind of strength and precision, but it's in, ill speech or something like that, to speak sheker, to speak falsehood. And they are valorous. They have gvura. They're like mighty in the land, but not in a faithful way. Instead, they go from evil to evil. V'otilo yada'u. They do not know me, or translated here as heed me, declares the Lord. All right, Ellen, a comment before we wrap up, and then a Lance word as well.
Okay. The syntax, the English teacher in me is
Yes.
now.
Yes. Okay. Good.
Because the way in which the verses are written, declares the Lord, only refers to one sentence, not two. And included in that is, so to me, 9:1 is an extension of Jeremiah speaking.
Okay.
From 8. And
Mhm.
and you look at it, and even my people, it's not capitalized.
Good.
And if you go a little further, when you look at the next verse that God is speaking, he says, I do because of my poor people. My is then capitalized.
Mhm.
So to me, 9 is almost Jeremiah wishing to escape from this group of sinners.
Excellent. Okay.
And the next verse is God speaking again.
Great.
If you put that verse 1 that you just identified, to me, the way I read it was to pair it with verse 23.
Yeah.
Because it's that just those two are an aside.
Good.
And
That it's God, then Jeremiah, then back to God.
Okay. All right. I think I've been effectively overruled by the class here.
Also, because those two are actions, they're human actions. They're saying, I want to cry, I want to run.
Great. Okay. I have to hang that sermon up then for another time, because I think that's a very convincing argument. I mean, I had to read it against the grain as it is, because I already argued that the miyitain, those little intros to 8:23 and 9:1 were, conjoining those verses. So absolutely, I think a convincing argument. I'll have to now go back to the commentaries and see whether anyone weighs in particular, but already we can say, to Ellen's point, that the JPS translation weighs in, because it's a lowercase m in my people in verse 1 and a capital M, in me in verse 2. So clearly the JPS interprets that as Jeremiah, or whoever that speaker is in the end of chapter 8, continues on to chapter 9, verse 1. All right, I stand convinced. Lance, did you want to throw in a last word?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. Good. Lots of rich discussion, lots to consider, and we'll wrap up. Certainly, well, whatever. Never want to make promises we can't keep. We will continue next week with the continuation of chapter 9. So good day to all. Hope all is well. We're here if you need anything. Love to mom and dad. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.